Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first webinar session organized by Philippine Society for Quality. True to its vision, the Society is continuously providing relevant training and certification activities which are responsive to the needs of the industries. Today's session will focus on future-proofing our career and companies. This seminar is timely considering that the series of reviews were made by companies in their trajectories because of the pandemic, and the business landscape will also be affected or is being affected already by the fourth industrial revolution and other factors that will make them outcompeted. So ask yourselves, are you future proofed? Is your company or your businesses future proofed? In a fast-paced business world, successfully future-proofing your business can be a strategic move to stay ahead of challenges and allow you to embrace opportunities as they arise. For me, future-proofing is deliberately taking steps to ensure that we remain relevant to our organization by becoming an expert in the work we do and the consonant processes which go with it. This afternoon, I'm very humbled to present to you our resource speaker for today. He is an avid entrepreneur, serial angel investor, highly sought after keynote speaker, and author of Future Proof Your Career and Company. Over the years, with his popular leadership seminars and workshops, he has inspired over 10,000 leaders and prepared them for the increasingly disruptive future. Prior to his entrepreneurial and literary adventures, he was an adventure. He was an award-winning CEO of global companies such as Inspiro and SPI Global. Under his leadership, these companies won over 100 awards, including Best Company of the Year, Best Employer of the Year, and Best Leadership Team of the Year. He was recognized as the ICT CEO of the Year. He holds an international MBA from the Thunderbird School of Global Management. When he is not busy with future-proofing leaders, he is busy child-proofing his home for his two young daughters. He has lived in the Philippines for over 14 years and has recently moved to Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Maulik Parekh.
Hello,
Hi,
and
hi, sir.
Zandra, thank you very much for your very kind introduction. And thanks to Ray as well for inviting me to this webinar and to have the opportunity to spend some time with your members. Really appreciate it. So, as Zandra mentioned, what I would like to do is quickly cover some of the forces beyond COVID-19 that are impacting us, and also share with you at least 5 things you can do to future-proof your company. Given the time limit, we may not have enough time to go through how to future-proof your career, but obviously that section is widely informed in the book that I have written, and I hope that you'll have a chance to pick a copy of that book and read that yourself. So before I talk about the 3 disruptive forces and the 5 ways you can future-proof your company, I would like to quickly take you back to 100 plus years. And if we go to the next slide, you know, when we think of Titanic, we automatically think of the iceberg. We automatically think that it was the iceberg that spelled the doom for the unfortunate ship. It was the iceberg that made Titanic sink. But the question for the leaders is, was it really the iceberg that sunk the ship? Or was it the captain and the crew who did not change the direction? They did not change the course of the ship and collided with the iceberg. A lot of the times when we come across these unfortunate situations in our lives, we automatically blame things outside of our control for the unfortunate situations taking place in our lives. We blame typhoons, we blame volcanic eruption, we blame COVID-19. For example, we automatically blame that COVID-19 is the reason why the businesses around the world are suffering. But is it really COVID-19 that is the iceberg that we are experiencing today? That's a very important question to ask. If it was really COVID-19 that was the iceberg, then all businesses around the world would be experiencing the same negative effects on their top line as well as their bottom line. But that's not the case. Just to give you an example, the top 5 technology companies in the world, the likes of Apple and Amazon and Google and Microsoft and Facebook, they all did 18% more revenue in Q3 of 2020 than Q3 of 2019. So they actually fared better during the pandemic. At the same time, the brick and mortar traditional companies like JCPenney, some of the biggest retailers, if you've been to the US, you are quite familiar with these names: JCPenney, J. Crew, Lord & Taylor, Brooks Brothers. A lot of these retailers had to either close their stores down or go out and file for bankruptcy. Another example that I would like to share with you is if you have eaten Domino's pizza, it's obviously a popular brand in the pizza industry. Domino's did 15% more revenue in Q3 of 2020 compared to Q3 of 2019. At the same time, Pizza Hut, which is in the same industry, pretty much the same business model, ended up filing for bankruptcy. So we have to ask ourselves that if COVID-19 was the iceberg, if COVID-19 was the reason why all businesses are suffering around the world, why is it that some businesses are faring so well, significantly better than a year before, while the others are filing for bankruptcy? So clearly, COVID-19 is not the iceberg. The iceberg is not having embraced digital transformation. The iceberg is not having built a very strong purpose for your company that goes beyond just the top line and the bottom line, that allows you to rally your troops when you are coming across these very difficult situations. The iceberg is not having unleashed a culture of innovation within your company. The iceberg is not having built a culture of lifelong learning where your employees are always excited to keep up with what's up with the new skills that they need to cultivate to stay relevant in this rapidly changing world. And the iceberg is not having built a very strong, fun culture, a strong VMV, vision, mission, values for your company that are not just stuck on the walls of your organization, but they are permeating throughout your company. So when you come across situations like COVID-19, we have to take a step back, and instead of blaming these external factors that are impacting our lives, we have to ask ourselves, what are some of the things within our control that we can do to ensure that we are not negatively impacted by it? And how does one go about it, right? The way to do that is by future-proofing yourself, as in your career, but also future-proofing your company. And how does one go about future-proofing one's career and company? Very simply, it's by taking time in your life to study, to observe, to to follow some of the trends and the clues that give you a glimpse as to where the world is going, what the future is going to look like, and then creating a very informed view of where the world is going to be in the next 5 or 10 years, and ensuring that you are proactively prepared for these changes. So the important thing about future proofing oneself or the company is about really paying attention to many of the clues around us that actually give us a glimpse as to where the future is going. And I want to briefly cover some of those clues and trends in the next few slides. So if you go to the next slide, most of you have seen this quadrant slide where on the x-axis you have not important things to important things, and on the y-axis you have urgent matters and not urgent matters. If you take a step back and just think about this quadrant, you very quickly realize that most of our time as humans is spent on this urgent and important quadrant, because these are the fires that we must put off. These are the crises that we must take care of. These are the escalations that come our way that we must address. But we don't realize that because we are spending so much of our time in taking care of these urgent and important matters, we are always behind the eighth ball, because we are never able to spend time in the quadrant, which I call the magic quadrant, which is not urgent matters, but they are important. And one day they will become urgent if you're not going to pay attention to it. So what I noticed for the last 9 to 12 months is that people are spending so much of their time in this urgent and important quadrant, almost like their head is buried in the sand taking care of COVID-19 related situations, that they are not taking time to look at the horizon and look at the very disruptive and strong forces and storms colliding at the horizon. And I'm talking about the artificial intelligence, the digital natives, and the gig economy. None of these forces are urgent because none of them are pushing us out of our jobs. None of these forces are putting companies out of business as COVID-19 is doing to an extent. But if we don't pay attention to these forces, one day they will start doing that. And the reason I know this is because of my own firsthand experience. Until March of last year, I was the CEO of one of the largest BPO companies based in the Philippines called Inspiro. And in the last 3 years, I noticed that the artificial intelligence was slowly infiltrating our jobs and our processes. I noticed that the digital natives, the Gen Zers and millennials, were storming the workplace in large numbers, and they were turning it upside down just because they are so different. And I also noticed that the gig economy, the popularity of freelancing was changing not only who got the job done, but also where and how. And I had to take a step back and extrapolate some of these forces and see where they are heading. When I took a look at these three forces, I realized that maybe they are so unrelated. I mean, how could smart machines, for example, the AI, would have anything in common with the digital natives? Or how would it have anything in common with the gig economy? But then I started doing some research about these three forces, and I realized that they're all siblings. They are all born out of the digital revolution in the last 20 plus years. And they are feeding off of each other. As the technology gets better, they consume it better. And as they consume the technology better, more money is going in to make the technology better. So it's a feeding frenzy that is taking place right now within these three forces. And before we know it, it's going to peak over the next 5 to 10 years based on the extrapolations given by the industry analysts. So how do we make sure that we are preparing for it? The first thing we have to do is we have to very briefly understand each of these forces in isolation, and then talk about what we can do to prepare proactively for these forces. So if you go to the next slide, artificial intelligence. According to a recent study done by McKinsey, it found that up to 375 million jobs are at risk of being displaced globally because of artificial intelligence and automation. One of the questions I get asked all the time as I'm doing these webinars for various groups is, how do I know if my job is at risk? How do I know if AI will take my job or part of my job that I'm doing today? And the simplest way to answer that is by look at 3 or 4 different studies done about that topic. There are studies done by Brookings Institution, Oxford University, and McKinsey, and they all ask the same question: what kinds of jobs will be at risk of being displaced by artificial intelligence? And they all came to a pretty much same common sense conclusion. And there are 3 parts to this conclusion. Number 1, if anything you're doing as part of your job is repetitive, is boring, is predictable, then you can assure yourself that that part of your job will be taken care of by AI in the next 5 to 10 years. So, if you are answering basic customer queries over the phone, over the email, over the chat, we already see the chatbots and some of the AI already working behind the scene in the customer service industry today. If you are checking in guests at a hotel, if you are creating reports, and this would be something that would be very pertinent to folks working in the quality department, you may be spending a lot of your time creating the same reports again and again. If you're creating the same reports or reading the same reports and analyzing them, those types of jobs or those types of tasks could easily done by AI. So you should be prepared for that eventuality to happen. The second part of that insight is that if what you do has a well-defined objective, and there is a large set of historical data that you can train AI with, then AI can do your job. Just to give you an example, a year ago, Google Health announced that its artificial intelligence algorithm did a better job reading mammograms than the trained and experienced human professionals. How did they do that? They were able to feed large set of historical data, the mammograms diagnosed by the trained professionals, into this algorithm. And it was given a very well-defined objective that, hey, please look out for either the malignant or the benign tumor. And before you know it, the machine learning started doing this job better than the trained and experienced professionals. So if anything that you do has a very well-defined objective, and you have a large set of historical data you can feed the AI algorithm with, then AI can do that part of your job. And the third element that we need to be aware about artificial intelligence is that if what you do requires only basic cognitive skills, such as learning, reasoning, predicting, then AI can do that job. So for example, when you are when you're visiting Amazon or Shopee or Lazada, for example, or when you're watching Netflix, and it gives you an option after you type in what you are looking for, that you may also like these recommendations. Those recommendations are not done by humans. I mean, there are millions of customers that Amazon has, it doesn't have enough human bandwidth to be able to follow what would Ray like or what would other people like. It is all done by artificial intelligence. The AI behind the scene is learning from your past viewing habits on Netflix or shopping habits on Lazada or Shopee or Amazon, and is predicting what else you may like based on your history. So those are the three areas that we need to pay attention to and make sure that if any of the things, any of the tasks that we do today are part of that, then we need to be prepared for that transitioning to AI in the next 5 to 10 years. So the obvious question that I get asked all the time is then, Maulik, I mean, if all of these things would be done by AI, what would humans do? You know, what would be left for humans to do? And the simple answer is things that AI cannot do. There are inherent limitations with AI today, at least for the next 10 years. AI doesn't have some of the innate human ability. And what are some of those innate human abilities? Our creativity, our ingenuity, our ability to think strategically and holistically about something, our ability to be resourceful about handling an unprecedented crisis like COVID-19. Imagine a CEO being AI. If a company was run by AI versus a human being, it would be a disaster in a situation which is unpredictable. Something else that is very human to us is our ability to connect and influence others, our ability to lead and inspire others, our ability to empathize and feel other people's pain or joy, our ability to love. Those are the things that are going to be very much high in demand over the next 10 to 20 to 30 years because companies will figure out a way to do all the boring and repetitive and traditional tasks by AI, but it will need humans to connect with other humans. It will need humans to inspire large group of team members. It will need humans to predict and prepare for an unprecedented situation like COVID-19. So those are the things we need to be focused on when we are looking at how to have a thriving career over the next 5 to 10 years. And we'll cover a little bit more about that as we discuss 5 things you can do to future-proof your company later. Let's go to the second disruptive force, digital natives. Why is this group of young and scrappy, headphone wearing, TikToking, Snapchatting generations important for us to pay attention to? Very simple, for 3 key reasons. Number one, for their sheer numbers. According to a recent survey done, the Gen Z now has become the largest generation in the world with 2.47 billion people. And millennials follow them closely with 2.4 billion people. I know many of our attendees today are probably Gen Zers or millennials. Number two, by 2030, when the last batch of baby boomers will be retiring, 2/3 of the global workforce will be made up of either the Gen Zers or millennials. And number three, they are very different. To assume that, oh, it's just another generation and we'll continue doing the same things for the next 20, 30, 40 years will be disastrous for companies because these young people are very different than their predecessors, the Gen Xers, the generation that I belong to, or the baby boomers. And how are they different? They're different in 3 different ways. Number one, they want to work with the latest technology. Look at their life, right? Gen Zers, the first batch of Gen Zer, by the time that person became 10 or 12 years old, they already had a smartphone in their hand. And then subsequently, every 2 years, they saw their parents buying them a new version of that smartphone every 2 years. They saw Alexa and Siri becoming better and smarter every year. They saw and witnessed the internet connectivity speed becoming 20-fold better in the last 10 years. So the only world they know is the world where everything is getting better, faster, and smarter. Everything is upgrading every single year. That's the world they know. So no wonder when they're looking for an employer, they're looking for an employer who has the best technology they can work with, not the traditional legacy systems that are not employee friendly. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind as you look at your plan on how to attract the best and the brightest from these generations. Second thing that we need to understand about these folks is that they're very entrepreneurial. What does it take now to start a new business? Nothing much. I mean, you need to have a great idea, but if you have a smartphone, if you have a tablet, if you have a PC and internet connectivity, you can actually start your own business. You can start a freelancing business. You can build your own app and put it out in the marketplace. You can start small buy and sell business. Some of the Gen Zers that I interviewed and researched during this book writing are already doing these things. They already have a very healthy business on the side while they are going to school or colleges. Because technology allows them to have that ability to put their entrepreneurial idea into practice, their view of the world and what they want to do in their life has significantly changed. There was a recent study done, and they found that 72% of the high schoolers want to start their own business. They want to be the masters of their own destiny. They don't want to work for someone else. So what does that mean for the companies? What does that mean for the leaders who are attending these seminars? That means two things. Number one, if you attract these young people, if you want to attract these people to your company, you have to take a step back and look at yourself and say, are you a traditional, hierarchical, very bureaucratic company? Or you are one of the hip companies that they would like to work for, that you are very flat in your organization, that people are not walking around with their title on their shoulders, that nobody is saying to somebody else that, hey, we have tried that idea before and it didn't work, so don't give me your new ideas. Just do what we have been doing for the last 100 years. Then you would not be able to attract these people to come and work for you, right? The second thing you have to do is, even if you are lucky enough to attract these people to your company, in order for you to retain it, you will have to create what I call in the book a culture of intrapreneurship, where these entrepreneurial young people can come in and they can manifest their ideas. They can create new things. They can innovate on behalf of the company. If you can create that environment for them, then obviously you'll be able to not only attract, but also retain these young people. And if they're going to be 2/3 of your workforce, you have no choice. No matter how small or how big your business is, you have no choice to be able to attract and retain these people. You would need that. And the third thing we need to understand about them is that they're very purpose driven. One of the first things that comes to our mind when we think of the Gen Zers or millennials is that they are narcissistic. We hear that all the time, that it's a me generation. it's all about me, me, me. But if you look beyond this myopic and wrong stereotype, you realize that they are actually one of the most woke generations to come along. They are super excited about making a difference in the world that they want to inherit over the next few decades. And they want to make sure that they are doing their part in making this world a better place to live. So when they're looking for an employer, they're also looking for an employer who is equally passionate about the causes, who are very close to their hearts. They want to know, what do you stand for, before they stand with you as an employee or as a consumer. They want to know what you believe in, what cause you believe in, before they believe in your brand as an employee or as a consumer. So we need to keep this very salient features about this generation in mind as we look at the rest of the presentation. So let's go to the next slide. And the last one is the gig economy, the third force that I discuss in my book. And it took me a while before I decided to include that as one of the disruptive forces. But as I researched more about what's happening with the gig economy and where it's going over the next 10 years, I realized that it's probably the most powerful trends among the three, because it relates to our innate desire to crave for freedom in our lives. I mean, think about it. Why do we have an acronym called TGIF? Why is it not called TGIM? Thank God it's Monday. Have you ever run into anybody who says, oh, wow, thank God it's Monday, I'm so excited? Typically, people are so excited that thank God it's Friday, because during the weekend, they have their freedom. Nobody tells them when to wake up or when to go to bed, what to do, what to eat, who to hang out with, etc. We have complete freedom on our lives during the weekend. But then as soon as Monday comes along, we lose some of that freedom, because at work, someone else is deciding what we work on, who we work with on, when we work on it, where we work on it. Somebody is always driving our life at the workplace. But people are looking for freedom, and the freelance economy, the gig economy, offers that freedom to people. There are some 35% of the US workforce today is already involved in the freelance economy. And that number is going to increase to 50% by 2030 in the next 10 years. And the growth for the gig economy, the freelancing economy, would be even significantly higher in places like the Philippines or India or China, because of the younger populations. And you may wonder that maybe the gig economy is for the Grab driver, or for the Uber driver, or for the virtual assistants, or the dog walkers in the US, the jobs we will consider as low skilled. But that is not the case. 45% of the professionals working in the gig economy have advanced degrees in marketing, in IT, in business consulting, in accounting, in writing, in graphical design. So people of all walks of life are drawn to the freelancing economy because it gives them that freedom. And many of us have enjoyed that freedom, in the last 9+ months, because we had no choice but to work from home, and we had a little bit more freedom to decide when we are working and when we are hanging out with our families and our loved ones. Imagine having that nonstop, not just until the COVID-19 is gone, but having that as part of your lifestyle, right? So this concept of freelancing is changing the world in such a significant way that we'll be looking at the future of work very differently 10 years down the road. Philippines is well known around the world. I've traveled around the world and I haven't gone to a single place in the world where I did not run into another Filipino who was working there as an OFW. But many of these Filipinos had to sacrifice to leave their families and friends and their homeland behind to go and make a living in other parts of the world so they can support their family members here in the Philippines. But with the freelancing economy, you don't have to leave your country anymore. You just have to get on one of the freelancing network like Upwork or freelancer.com, and sitting here in the Philippines, you can earn a decent living that you can support your family with. So I write in my book a very powerful quote that it's no longer about where you go in the world to explore the opportunities. Now it is about how do you explore the world of opportunities from where you are. You no longer have to stand outside of the American consulate at 5 in the morning to make sure that you get in line to get your visa and leave your family, your friends, your homeland, your favorite food behind to able to make a good living. You can now, because of this global phenomenon called the gig economy, can make a living and be the master of your own destiny. So this is a very powerful force that we need to pay attention to. So in the next 5 slides, what I would like to do is cover, based on these three very powerful forces that are going to gain momentum over the next 3 years, next 3 to 5 to 10 years, what are some of the things a company can do? And as all of you are leaders within organizations in the Philippines, this is something you can keep in mind. This is something you can work on as part of being an executive committee or having a voice in where the industries and the companies that you're working for are going. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. So in order for you to future-proof your company, you have to do 5 things. And those 5 things are defined by different perspectives of the future that we may encounter over the next 10 years. So the first perspective about the future is that future is going to be digital going forward. And we have seen that during this COVID-19 situation. We had no choice but to go digital personally, professionally, but also as a company. We had no choice but to embrace the digital transformation. What does that mean? It means you have to transform your business. You cannot remain the traditional brick and mortar company that you had been in the past. You have to embrace digital transformation. If you think about Amazon, if you think about Airbnb, if you think about Uber or Grab, for example, what do they all have in common? They're all working in different industry, but there is something in common among all 3 companies. Amazon is a technology company working in retail. Airbnb is a technology company working in hospitality industry. Grab and Uber are technology companies working in transportation industry. So technology has been the foundation for this organization. And when you're thinking about your digital transformation, you're not worried about technology alone. Technology is not an end in itself, but it's a means to an end. All of these companies, if you research them and if you study them, you realize that they're investing a lot of time, effort, money into digital transformation. But it's not about buying this technology or that technology, but it's about solving problems for their customers. It's about creating value for their customers. It's about improving the employee experience, improving the employee engagement for their workforce. One of the great examples that I always share with people about the digital transformation is about Domino's Pizza. We talked about that earlier, that even in pandemic, it increased its revenue by 15%. How did they do that? Because this company has gone through an incredible and impressive digital transformation over the last 10 years. They didn't wait for COVID-19 to happen and then start the digital transformation. They were ahead of the curve, and it helped them. 12 years ago, if you do the research on the stock price of Domino's Pizza, it was down to the bottom. It was spiraling down. The sales in their stores were not going anywhere. The business was not doing really well. So the leadership team obviously took a step back and they said, you know what, maybe our pizza doesn't taste that good. And they asked customers to give them feedback as to tell us, how can we make this pizza better? And they said, your pizza crust tastes like cardboard and your pizza sauce tastes like ketchup. So do something about it. So the leadership took a note of it. They changed the recipe, they changed the ingredients, and they made their pizza better. But they did something else. They also embarked on a long strategic digital transformation process. 12 years ago, if you wanted to order Domino's Pizza, there were only two ways to do it. Either you walk into their store and get a pizza yourself, or you call in to order your pizza. Today, because of that transformation, they give people 15 different ways to order the pizza. You can literally just text the pizza emoji to the Domino's local number, and they will send you pizza within 30 minutes, your favorite pizza. They already have that in their database. They have an app to order the pizza. Within the app, there is a zero-click option. They make it so easy for you. You just have to open that app, and if you keep that page open for 30 seconds, it automatically orders your favorite pizza that they have in their database and delivers it to your place in 30 minutes. It also gives you an option to order pizza through Google Home or Alexa. So they use the digital transformation to make their customers' lives so easy. And that was the hallmark of it. Domino's, in fact, actually became the first company to deliver pizza through drone. And it's going to be the first company, based on their efforts, to be delivering pizza with unmanned vehicle, the autonomous vehicle that everybody's talking about. So ask yourself within your organization, given the COVID-19 situation, what wake-up calls you all had to go through? And what are some of the things you can embrace now before the next crisis hit us in the future? How can you get ahead of the curve and transform your business digital? Okay. The second thing that we need to do about future-proofing our company is create a perspective about the future. And that second perspective is the future is meaningful. So infuse purpose within your organization. Infuse purpose that your team members will be able to rally behind. They would be able to get excited about. I'm sure all of you have probably come across this very popular survey that Gallup does in the US. Every year, it asks the respondents in a survey, how engaged are you at the workplace? And only 30% of the people say that they are engaged at the workplace. Now, you have to ask yourself that, if all of these people are getting paid, why are they not engaged? It's because as humans, we are not only after the money, we are also we are also striving for meaning in our lives. And when we find an employer, when we find a job with a company that deeply cares about a cause that is very close to our heart, it inspires us to bring our best of our abilities to work every single day. Why is it important for companies to have these inspired employees? It's very simple. There was a study done recently by Bain and Company, and it found that if the satisfied employees' engagement level is 100%, the employees who are engaged at the workplace, their productivity level is at 144%. But the productivity level of inspired employees is at 225%. Meaning, if you can create that inspiring environment by having a larger than life purpose that people can rally behind, each person in your team is going to give 225% of themselves to your work. It's almost like doubling your workforce. And if you can do the same thing with your consumers, with your purpose, then it's almost like you're quadrupling your sales force, because these clients of yours, these customers, are going to become your biggest champions, your biggest ambassadors in the society, in the marketplace. I give an example of Patagonia when I'm talking about having a strong purpose. Those of you who are into outdoor activities, you may recognize the name of Patagonia because they are one of the most premier brand when it comes to outdoor apparel and tools that you need to be mountaineering, biking, hiking, etc. This company believes so strongly in preserving and protecting the environment that they give 1% of their overall sales every year to the charities working towards preserving and protecting the environment. It is very hard to work for this company because it's very hard to get in. There are so many people who are interested in getting into this company. But if you are lucky enough to get into the company, the first day you arrive at your job, the employee handbook that is given to you is titled, "Let My People Go Surfing." Yes. So when the surf is up near their Southern California office, all the employees can go out and surf no matter what they are doing. They can drop everything off and literally just go to the ocean and surf. No questions asked. And many of their employees actually do that. And if you think that is really crazy, why would any company do that? Listen to this. They're so firmly believing in their cause for protecting and preserving the environment that if any of their employees is involved in any protest for the environmental cause, and if they get caught by the police and if they get arrested by the police, the company would actually come and provide a bail, not just for yourself, but also for your spouse. So again, you don't have to go out and bail your employees. You don't need to allow your employees to go out and serve, but find something that your employees and you as leaders will get excited about. Make it meaningful when they come to work, because once you do that, then you are going to have an incredibly inspiring group of people working for you. Okay. The next perspective that you need to have about the future is, if you go to the next slide, future is boundless. unleash innovation. There are so many exciting opportunities in the marketplace right now. There are so many new things you can do because of the technology, because of the way the world is evolving, that if you get married to what you have been doing for the last 10, 15, 20 years, you will miss the boat on some of the new things that will be happening. One of the best ways to create an environment, a culture of innovation, is by not allowing any of your employees, including yourself, to marry to your existing products and services and your existing business model. Instead, make sure that your employees and yourself, you're all married to the timeless part of your business, which is the creativity and the ingenuity and the culture of innovation that you can build within your organization. Let me give you an example. If those of you who have been to the US, you're probably familiar with this brand called the Blockbuster Video Rental. You probably had a similar company here in the Philippines as well, where you would go to a store, you will rent a video of your favorite movie, you will take it home, you'll be able to keep that for 3 to 5 days, and then before they charge you late fee, you have to bring it back to the store. And back in the days, and this kind of tells you how old I am, when you had the VHS, that we had to actually rewind it properly to avoid an extra fee that was charged to us. What happened to Blockbuster? Just in 2004, company was at the peak of its operation. It had 9,000 stores in the US and in a couple of other countries. What happened to that business model? Well, guess what happened? They were so married to their existing business model and their products and services that they missed an opportunity to embrace the new technology that was coming up, the streaming. And very recently, they went out of business. But you contrast that with what happened to Netflix, for example. Netflix started in the late 90s as a company that would send DVDs by mail to people. So it was very similar business to Blockbuster. The only difference was Blockbuster was really brick and mortar. They had stores everywhere, whereas Netflix was doing all of this by mailing people the DVDs. They didn't have a huge investment in the brick and mortar stores around the country at that time. But in 2007, because it was not married to this DVD by mail business model, it made a pivot. It realized that maybe the future of video and movie watching is not going to be by rental, it's going to be by streaming. So it embraced that technology in 2007. And in 2012 and 13, it made another pivot. It realized that it cannot survive as a business if it's just streaming the movies and TV shows produced by other providers. It had to create its own shows and movies. So Netflix is a great example of how company did not marry to its products and services and business model, but instead it remained innovative. It remained timeless in its approach to the future. And it kept changing its direction. It kept changing where it was going. And by doing so, it has become one of the most valuable companies in the world, a company that is widely known around the world, even though it started its operation only in the US just a few years ago. So ask yourself, as you are going through this presentation, what kind of culture have you created within your team, within your organization? Are people allowed to think out of the box and come up with new ways of doing things? Or are people too scared to think out of the box? If people are too scared to raise their hand and say, I have a better idea of doing this, if that's the case, you'll be left behind. You want to be an environment where your employees feel highly comfortable coming to you and sharing their ideas on how they can innovate. And if everybody is innovating at a micro level, that's when the big macro innovation takes place for the company. Let's go to the next slide. The fourth perspective you should cultivate about the future is that future is going to be new. So you have to inspire learning, right? As we discussed earlier when we were talking about artificial intelligence, when you look at your employee base, you have to ask yourself which employees will become obsolete given their existing skills today, whose job will be displaced by artificial intelligence, and how do you reskill them to the skills that you would need as an organization. So it's a win-win situation. You cannot wait until that eventuality happens. This is a strategic imperative for the companies where they have to actually already map out per employee the employee journey over the next 10 years. Which employees are at most risk of being displaced by AI, and what do we do about them? The second group of employees that you need to think about is which employees would experience at least 30 to 50% of their job or the tasks they do within their job be taken away by AI. So imagine if you're an employee who has enough things to do for 40 hours a week today, but let's say 2 years, 3 years down the road, 20 hours of that person's job can be done by AI. The question you have to ask yourself as a leader is, so now that you have freed up those 20 hours with that employee, what would you do with that employee? What kind of additional skills you would like to upskill them with? So traditionally, the leadership and development efforts have been extremely reactive. They have been very tactical in the past. How can we prepare our employees for the needs of today? Going forward, though, we have to ask ourselves, how can I prepare my employees, not only for today, but for 3 years down the road, for 5 years down the road, for 10 years down the road? Companies who are going to be investing their time and effort and money in this human capital are going to see themselves as the leaders in the years to come. Amazon and AT&T are great examples of it. If you just Google Amazon and AT&T's upskilling program, you'll realize these companies are investing millions and millions of dollars in upskilling and reskilling their warehouse workers in the Amazon case. But in the case of AT&T, they're hardware engineers where the world is moving towards the software. So we don't all have to spend millions and millions of dollars. We are not AT&T, we are not Amazon, but each of us have to ask ourselves, what can we do? And what do we need to do to ensure that our employees are prepared for the next 5 to 10 years? And then that brings me to the last portion of how to future-proof your company. If you click one more time, you will see the future is fun, enjoy, expedition. We talked about future being challenging because we'll have to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be arduous. It's going to be stressful. So the question you have as leaders is, despite these challenges that we are going to anticipate and expect over the next 5 to 10 years, what kind of culture are you building within your organization, within your team? Would your employees one day, looking back 20 years from now, think of the time they spent with you as the journey of a lifetime, as the best part of their professional career? or they will remember that time they have spent with you and your company as that Monday to Friday nightmare that kept recurring over and over and over again. Whether your employees are having fun during this turbulent journey over the next 5 to 10 years is within your hands. It's already going to be difficult. The journey is already going to be difficult. So don't make it more difficult by creating a culture that allows politics at the workplace, that allows backstabbing at the workplace, that allows people bringing each other down at the workplace. Create an environment that is uplifting, that creates a support system for all, that is based on meritocracy, where people do their work and they get rewarded without anybody looking at whether they are close to their bosses or they are one of the favorites of the bosses or not. So make sure that in your organization, your employees are enjoying this expedition that they are about to undertake over the next 10 years. So that brings me to the conclusion of my presentation. Obviously, I have only shared half of the book given the time limit that we have. The other half actually talks about how to future-proof your career. And it's actually my favorite part of the book because it came from my heart. As an employee, as a leader, I have been seeing where the world is heading and what are some of the things that I would like to share with my employees and even with my daughters who are just 4 and 1 year old. How am I going to prepare them for the future? So I'm super excited that since the book went live on Amazon, it was #1 new arrival for almost 2 months. And if you have a chance, grab a copy for yourself. If you are looking for paperback copy, just send us an email at info@maulikparekh.com, and I'll be glad to send you a signed copy just for my friends here at PSQ. And the last thing I would like to share with you is that I'm very new to social media. I have all my life stayed away from social media, but just very recently, some 2 months ago, I embraced it to share my ideas and my thoughts and my vision for the future. And I share a lot of my tidbits and bite-sized ideas and suggestions and tools through my social media channels. So if you're on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, join along. I would love to have you guys tag along, and we'll all together conquer the future and claim the future for ourselves. So with that, I'll stop here. I know we have some time for the questions and answers. So back to you, Zandra or Ray.
Wow, thank you very much, Mr. Parekh, for a very comprehensive and insightful presentation. So, Sir Maulik, you presented three disruptive forces that we have to consider. These are AI, digital natives, and the gig economy. So these forces are altering every facet of business and society. And rather than focusing on the negative effect or negative side of these disruptive forces, we can look into this as a breakthrough, right? As a breakthrough or a step that could transform the society forever or in the next 10 years. So we have learned a lot from you, the 5 ways to future proof. So basically the next 10 years, if we want to maintain our relevance, we have to review our purpose. We have to rally this purpose among our employees. We have to embrace digital transformation. We have to be innovative. And our business models should be better versions than the original. And aside from considering the customer journey, we also have to consider the employee journey. So thank you so much, Sir Parekh, for those inputs and insights shared among the members of the Philippine Society for Quality. So at this juncture, we would like to invite our participants for some key takeaways or questions that you'd like to pose. We have first question here from VP. What is the future of work that you are seeing, and how do we prepare for the future so that we are future proofed?
Sure, that's a great question, and throughout the presentation, I think I touched upon it a little bit in different segments. But the future work is digital, it is decentralized, and it's hybrid. It's digital because even beyond COVID-19, I don't see companies fully going back to where they came from, where all employees would be expected to come back to work and work in a traditional environment, sitting next to each other. I think most companies are going to look for ways to create an environment where employees also have some freedom to decide, out of 5 days a week, if they can just come to work on 1 or 2 days, and then remaining 3 days they can work from home, saving time on transportation, getting stuck on EDSA, for example. Nobody wants to do that. And it gives them more time to spend with their families, right? So I think the future of work is going to be very digital. The future of work is going to be also decentralized, meaning it is not going to be very hierarchical. It's going to be team-based. And the teams are not going to be just based on full-time employees. It would be a hybrid of full-time employees working very closely with the freelancers who may be working, not even from the Philippines, for example. Freelancers could be coming from all over the world. And so companies will have to evolve to embrace this hybrid and decentralized model, because over the last many years, we are used to a very traditional way of managing, attracting and retaining our employees. So it's going to be digital, it's going to be decentralized, and it's going to be hybrid.
Okay, a hybrid, centralized, and digital future for the businesses. Okay, we have a second question here coming from Muhammad. How can this digital transformation incorporated into the academic structure to prepare our students for this change?
That's such a insightful question. And when I launched my book online, we had the CEO of Greenfig from the US attending that as a guest speaker. And she is running an organization that essentially provides online courses by partnering with the traditional universities. So what she shared with us is that this whole concept of you go through high school and then you go to 4 years of college or university, and if you decide to then do 2 more years of master's and then 3 more years of PhD, it's going to become obsolete. The younger generations, the digital natives, the Gen Zers, as well as Gen Zers, as well as I think you have a lot of background noise there, Zandra, I think.
Okay.
Oh, okay, no problem. So even the millennials, they were asked the question, do you have the patience, the time, the money in order for you to go through 4 years of college, university? And they said no. They would rather go for very specific courses online that brings them close to the skills. So for example, if they're only interested in coding, no need for them to spend 4 years learning philosophy and psychology and math and science and 500 other things, because now companies like Udacity, Coursera can easily give them an opportunity to learn coding by going for a very specific course. So the future of education is going to be very modular. Instead of people going for 4 years of degree, more and more young people are going to be very specific as to the skills they need, and they're going to go and learn those skills from these online universities. And another thing to keep in mind is that the half-life of skills has now gone down to 5 years, meaning within 5 years, the half of the skills are going down in the value. And so in 5 years, you'll have to actually go out and completely upgrade yourself to learn new skills, right? So it's going to be modular and it's going to be lifelong. Gone are the days where we can just go to the university, get a degree, put it on our wall at the office and showcase to everybody, like, I have a master's in this or PhD in this. Now going forward, it's going to be people being married to this lifelong learning. They never stop learning. And that's the future of education going forward.
Aksa, is it possible that AI can lead people in the future?
That's a great question. I'm sure our friend Patricia is probably watching a lot of Terminator movies. But yes, you know, when I started doing research, I realized that I would need to create a framework around this book and have a specific time horizon of, let's say, 10 years. Because if the book is futuristic and I don't have a time horizon, it's very easy to predict kind of the doomsday scenario that we see in some of the sci-fi movies. So there are quite a few predictions about what AI will be able to do 30, 40, 50 years or 100 years from now. And those models actually show that AI will be able to do exactly what we are doing and get better at it, in fact. And that concept is called singularity, where the AI would be so powerful that they would actually overtake humans in all of our abilities. But that's not going to happen for the next 10 years at least, and probably not 20 years. So as long as you invest your time and effort in becoming a better leader, in learning how to inspire people, in learning how to empathize with them, and really lead them from your heart, you are future proof and your career is okay. Uh, whether they can lead us in 50 years or 100 years from now, it looks very likely that one day that would happen. Okay. You're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute. Yeah.
Okay, sorry for that. Sir Malik, we have another question here from Mr. Bobby Sedano. He is asking whether he's asking what are the digital landscape limitations?
In the sense, because it's a very brief question, I'm just going to interpret it in my own way. What Bobby is asking is, what are the limitations of the digital landscape? And we discussed that, right? Technology is amazing in doing things that it's really good at. So you put AI into doing something very predictable, which is boring. It will do significantly better than the humans can. If technology, you teach the basic cognitive skills, so Amazon, for example, when it used AI to give us this, you may also like these recommendations for the books or for the products that we buy from them, AI is significantly better than humans. But at the same time, the limitations of digital landscape or the limitations of technology is that it is not able to keep up with the humans when it comes to our ability to think strategically and holistically. Just imagine, I mentioned earlier, imagine if the country leader or a CEO was AI. What would have happened during this COVID-19 situation? AI only knows what we can feed you in, right? I mean, if you can feed the information from the past, AI may be able to come up with a solution. But COVID-19 was such an unprecedented situation. The last time something like this happened was 100 plus years ago with the Spanish flu. So AI limitation is it doesn't know what to do when it comes across unprecedented, unpredictable situation. And that's where humans can shine. AI also doesn't know how to create something out of nothing. If you know any painters or artists in your life, where do they get their intuition? Where do they get their imagination? from something that doesn't even exist. They could be watching a sunset and they may be inspired to create a painting or write a poem. There is no connection between the sunset and the poem, but that's where the inspiration comes from. AI doesn't know how to be inspired or to inspire others. AI doesn't have an intuition. AI doesn't have its own creativity. So that's where humans can shine again. And the last thing is AI doesn't have empathy because AI doesn't have a heart. AI doesn't have a conscience. So it doesn't know what is right or wrong. It will keep doing the same thing that you ask it to do and will get better at it because of the machine learning, but it won't know what it is doing is good or not. So those are the limitations, at least for the next 10 years. Obviously, technology is expanding and it's evolving so fast now that one day, a lot of these things that I talked about potentially could be solved. But at least for the next 10 years, we have such good advantage against the AI. And it's matter of basically creating that match made from heaven together, where we leverage our best as humans. And then AI, we leverage the best of what AI has to offer.
I agree with you, Sir Maulik. Uniquely human abilities like emotional intelligence and leadership will still help us, will still future-proof our careers. We are down to the last question from Ms. Annalisa Puyo. Since human resource can be replaced by AI, other than what you have mentioned on the qualities of workers we should be, how how can we inspire our co-workers to be more prepared?
Yeah, so I think, again, at least for the next 10 years, we have to keep reminding people, and Zandra, you mentioned this earlier, that we should not be threatened by AI. We should not be threatened by or feel negative about AI. Instead, we should look at this opportunity as a match made in heaven. And instead of focusing on what AI will do by taking away your job, we should focus on what AI is good at and how it complements us. So, AI is really good at doing something significantly better when it's very small thing that they need to do, very precise. It's about precision, more precise than humans. But AI is really bad at the big things, creating strategy and vision, for example. That is such a human thing for us to do. So that's something we need to create on our own. AI is very good at coming up with predictions based on the data that we have fed. But AI would fail miserably when it comes to getting in front of employees and inspiring them, touching their hearts. Because as I said earlier, AI doesn't have a heart or conscience. So when you are communicating this with your employees, create a vision that it's actually a very complementary to what humans can do. There are so many innate human abilities that we have that we'll continue to need for the next 10 plus years. And our goal is to teach people what AI is really good at, and also remind people what they are good at that AI cannot be good at, and create that complementarity at the workplace.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maulik Parekh, for that for answering all of the questions raised by our participants. At this juncture, may I present you the certificate of appreciation. May I read the citation for imparting valuable insights and inspiration to the participants during the Future-Proof Your Career and Company on January 22, 2021. The Philippine Society for Quality awards this testimonial and certificate of appreciation to Mr. Maulik Parekh. Once
Thank
again, thank
you
you so
so
much, sir.
much. Thank you very much, Zandra. Thank you very much, Ray, for inviting me. I had such a good time, as you can tell, sharing my insights and ideas with you. If anybody else has any question that we could not get to, just shoot me a note at info@maulikparekh.com. I would be glad to hear from you. And I will definitely take a moment and respond to those queries and questions. So once again, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat.
Thank you so much, sir. And we are very pleased to have you in our first webinar session. At this juncture, may we request our participants to scan the QR code, which will be flashed in the screen, or kindly check your emails for the post-evaluation survey and consent form link. We'll give you a few seconds to have this QR code scanned. Kindly please evaluate. Also, all participants will be given your certificates via email. It will be sent by the Philippine Society for Quality Secretariat. At this point, may I present to you the Philippine Societies for Quality's activities for 2021? Again, as I mentioned, true to our vision, we are continuously providing relevant training and certification activities which are responsive to your needs, and we have invited renowned quality gurus through the years. We have partnered with different local and international organizations for collaborative projects which will greatly benefit our members. And we also facilitate the highest national recognition for exemplary organizational performance of private and public organizations in the country, known as the Philippine Quality Award. We also promote quality awareness and practices in both private and public sectors. It also encourages the development of members in the areas of quality leadership and technology. In so doing, we recognize outstanding achievements of companies and individuals as a way of institutionalizing quality. In the past years, numerous companies were recipients of recognition such as Duran Award, Quality Manager of the Year Award, Benchmarking, and Best Practice Awards. I'd also like to take this opportunity to invite you, your companies, and your networks to attend the training activities organized by the Society. Should you be interested, please get in touch with our Secretariat or visit our website, www.psq.org.ph, for details. And we are looking forward to seeing you again on the various activities laid down by the Philippine Society for Quality. On your screen are the different training activities for the members of the Philippine Society for Quality. We are also looking forward to seeing you on the free webinar scheduled on Feb 26, March 26, and April 26. So prior to ending this event, we would like to invite the Philippine Society Quality members for our general membership meeting, which will be held on February 26, 2021. So you can reach us via our social media accounts. You join us via LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and you can also email us at secretariat@psq.org.ph. So we have come to the end of this webinar. Thank you so much to all of you here, especially to our participants and our resource speaker. See you once again in the next webinar session.